Close Up is brought to you by the Kia Sorento R, redefining the power of Kia.
Is this Foreshore and Seabed the sequel? The power struggle over water threatens to undermine the asset sales, derail the coalition and reinforce the stereotype of Māori with their hands out. It's hard to see an upside in all of this. So, how did it get to this and what's the way out? We had invited the Prime Minister on tonight. In fact, we invited anyone on from the government, but given John Key's critical meeting with the Māori Party tomorrow, you can imagine things are a bit tense. But joining me now, Labour's Shane Jones, must be deja vu for him. Labor struggled with a similar scenario. And lawyer, then ACT MP, now back to lawyer. Is that a move up the food chain, Stephen Franks?
It's a more comfortable food chain.
Listen, tell me, putting your lawyer hat on, can anyone own the water?
Yes, clearly when you've got it in a bottle or when you've applied it to your farm, the question of ownership is a practical one. The law looks at these things and says who exercises the control, who has the power to exclude others, who can get the benefit or enjoyment of it. And so yes, clearly you can own water. The question of whether you can own a running river might be a bit different.
So, but is it a reasonable case to take? People are jumping up and down saying, look how terrible Māori going to the Waitangi Tribunal and threatening legal action. If you're in their camp, would you be doing it?
I would, and the reason is because they've been left in a limbo. I mean, we've actually had the government make a rather odd decision 3 years ago to dump Michael Cullen's law. He ended up, after 2 years of chaos, he actually ended up nailing pretty closely what the common law or customary tests would have been if it had gone to court. But the device the government used was to say no one owns it and then to assert a whole lot of powers and hold out a whole lot of very unclear privileges, co-guardianships, which means that it's been left murky. So it's a bit like when people have when a family has a vague will, it can explode the family. If it was set out clearly, they know what the rules are, there's nothing to argue about, but the government has deliberately left this in a limbo.
Shane Jones, this is what I can't understand. You went through this whole business. You had to travel around the country trying to sort of justify and persuade people on Michael Cullen's plan. Surely any government should have seen this one coming.
Yeah, it's an utter surprise to me. I was involved in the Māori fisheries and obviously had a role also in the seabed and foreshore since the time I've been in politics, but anyone with a modicum of intelligence would have known that once the Waitangi Tribunal took on the issue of rights to water, and more importantly, there's been a talk fest for 3 or 4 years under the leadership, I think, of Nick Smith, talking about rights to water, and it's gone absolutely nowhere. So really, in many respects, John Key, although John's showing a great deal of contempt and anger to the current process, he's partly the architect of his current misfortunes.
Do you believe, Shane Jones, that because people see this as Māori being greedy, do you think there are elements of that in this?
What people are actually doing, mate, is following the law. I mean, the little hapu around Mangakino, who just enjoyed a Supreme Court decision saying that they had rights to the bed of the Waikato River, they're not doing something that is illegal, they're following the law. And where the law provides an opportunity for you to affirm, protect or safeguard whatever property rights you have, you're entitled to use it. Now, when you use it's another matter, and it's problematic, the timing for the government. From my perspective as a Labour politician, it's immaculate timing, this litigation.
Well, you must be loving sitting back watching this, the same uncomfortable position you're in before. But Stephen Franks, who needs to sort it out? Is it the government's job? Is it Parliament's job? Or do you throw it to the Supreme Court and say, tell us what you think?
Well, sadly, the Supreme Court, we haven't had the same kind of drive to reconcile conflict in our Supreme Court as in some others. I mean, Obama got a superbly calculated decision recently out of Supreme Court, but the government would be afraid that our Supreme Court would A, take a long time, and B, end up throwing up just as many complications as it started with. And so, no, the government needs to, but they've boxed themselves in. The odd thing is, this tribunal hearing is going ahead without any of the substantive legal arguments being heard. I mean, customary law is pretty simple. It basically says Māori customary law wasn't that different from the common law. You have to keep using it. You have to own the land adjacent. You have to show that you've had the power to exclude others. Well, nearly all of those things people haven't had in relation to water. I mean, customarily they couldn't even build a dam that would hold it. So that the substantive rights wouldn't go in favour of Maori on my expectation, and that's certainly what Marcus Poole thought, who was the foremost Maori land lawyer. But the government won't join issue because they're too scared to say that. They don't want to make it clear. They want to make it murky and just push it off to some other generation.
Now, Shane Jones, do you think, can a deal be cut here? Is that what's going to happen tomorrow when John Key sits down with the Maori Party? They're going to have to find some political solution?
Well, the Maori Party are fringe players in New Zealand politics. John Key is hell-bent on selling the assets. Well, what he actually has is John Banks and he has Peter Dunn. So he has his 51% in the House. And John Key has been very unambiguous. He's basically said, to hell with the tribunal, to hell with the claims, to hell with the Maori resource law, I'm going to sell these assets. So I doubt very much if a sustainable deal can be reached, despite Tariana's best efforts by wearing that absurd hat.
Stephen Franks, just before we go, your pick. Is this going to derail or stall the asset sales process?
It need not. I think the government is correctly arguing that there isn't a necessary connection, but the question is whether the political storm can be withstood. In the end, it was nothing in the law that created the Seabed and Foreshore Act. It was the government lost its nerve after it had failed in the attempt to squelch it, and that is much more likely to fail here because they've offered a deal. As soon as you offer a deal to people who are pragmatic and tough, they'll press to the end to see if they can make you give it to them.
Oh, well, the political fighting is going to carry on. Thank you both for your contribution.